Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for added time, answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's show. Haven't done added time in probably over a month, maybe a little bit less than that, but it feels like a while. There's been so many big events that have happened that have sort of taken priority over added time on the channel, whether that's the European Super League, other big news match previews, but great to bring it back today as we go into a massive week for Chelsea Football Club. And there are some questions about Wednesday's semi-final second leg against Real Madrid. But before we get into answering your questions, I want to ask you guys, please hit that like button if you enjoy the content, because it helps new people find the channel. And if you want more Chelsea content, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. But let's get into your questions right away here from Adil about Wednesday's game. He asked, should Timo Werner start against Real, considering his ability to create space for our other players from attracting defenders and his constant work rate and ability to run in behind? I do think Werner is one of those players I think is very likely to start on Wednesday, given the nature of the game, the fact that Chelsea may play on the break a little bit more. I think it's about who you pair with Timo Werner, actually. I think someone like Hakim Ziyech has proven in recent weeks in big games that him and Werner seem to have a good understanding. The way, especially Werner actually is creating chances for Ziyech. I think way back in the summer, we expected it to be the other way around, but it seems that Werner is setting up a lot of good chances for Hakim Ziyech. We saw it at the weekend against Fulham, where Ziyech should have scored, and also we think about the Man City semi-final where Ziyech scored, and also the Atletico Madrid second leg. So that could be a pairing. So of course you'd have to leave out Christian Pulisic, who's been in wonderful form, had a brilliant game last week, scored a big goal, is a big game player for Chelsea that I want in the front three. Kai Havertz scoring 2 goals at the weekend. It's a big call, I think, for Thomas Tuchel. I think, obviously he's got 5 subs, so he can change the game. But I think Timo will be one of those players. And I'll get into my preview tomorrow because there are some big calls for Tuchel to make, which he's got mostly right as Chelsea's head coach. But I do agree with you. It's those things other than the finishing. If Timo can just get his finishing right, I think there are so many other elements to his game where I think we'd appreciate it a lot more. It's just that finishing that in a tight contest like this could cost Chelsea in the end. But I understand why people would want Werner to start on Wednesday. Up the Chelsea asked, not match related at all, but why do Nike make boring kits for Chelsea? Is it because of our main club colours being too bland? Absolutely not. I don't think it has anything to do with the club colours. I just think a lack of inspiration. A lot of the main brands now, it feels very template-like with the kits, especially the away kits, can feel very similar to kits of a lot of clubs. And you'll look across Europe and it's like just a colour change basically in the sponsors and the badge basically changing, and that's a frustration. I think the first kit this year, as I've dissected on the channel before, I think is an absolute disaster. I will not be buying it this year. I actually think that sometimes with especially the home kit, I actually have no problem in the away kit, because of course I think that gets a little bit more difficult to sort of design at times. But I've said this before and I'll say it again, I think Nike are missing out heavily, not going in and being more nostalgic with their kits, maybe trying to revamp or redo old Chelsea kits. The amount of money they made on that anniversary kit was ridiculous, in terms of the people who don't buy kits. And surely Nike want to make a lot of money from their Chelsea deal. I don't think Chelsea at the current moment should be renewing that deal, because I just don't think at the moment it's working out. But it's frustrating, isn't it? I think that shirts could be a lot better. I think they could involve fans a lot more, but that's not why Nike pay as much as they do. And this comes up with the European Super League conversations we've been having in terms of supporters being involved in their clubs a lot more. So yeah, I agree with your frustration. I think it has nothing to do with our main colours, which are wonderful, the royal blue. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I just think it's design problems and not being maybe more original, or maybe celebrating the history of Chelsea a lot more, which I actually think could make the shirts a lot more enticing for more people. Jean-Luc asked, with Kai's performance in the number 9 position, do you see him as the long-term striker, or do we still need a marquee signing in that position? I think there is this sense that, yeah, Kai is playing really well at the moment. I think his performances as our number 9 have been so good. I think in terms of his movement, his finishing, I think in terms of being a focal point that Chelsea have actually lacked. And it feels, the further we've pushed Kai up the pitch, the bigger the impact he's given to Chelsea when he was struggling earlier in the season. And it feels like he's really hitting form at the moment. With that first question, do you play Kai Havertz on Wednesday against Real Madrid? Given the fact that Real sat a little bit deeper in that second half, which is why I think it was necessary for Kai to come on the pitch alongside Hakim Ziyech. So that's a big question. I just think there is a bit of realism that Chelsea will be spending big in some areas this summer, because Chelsea at least in recent seasons, want to spend big. They just do. And whether we desperately need it, I mean, I do think, as I said, I think in yesterday's video or Friday's video, Chelsea do need a focal point. I just don't think at the moment there's enough goals across the team to deal with not having a main striker. I think there's too much reliance on someone being that 20-goal season striker. If Chelsea, like Man City, can filter out goals in a variety of areas where we get more goals from our centre-backs, we get more goals from central midfield, which is a key area Chelsea do not get enough goals from, and that's a frustrating point, and I think puts so much pressure on the front three at the moment to score those goals. So I absolutely understand why Chelsea will be going in there and trying to get Haaland, trying to get Lukaku. And sure, spending 90 million, it's again going in there and splashing loads on the striker position. But Thomas Tuchel is under pressure to challenge seriously for the Premier League title, win big trophies at Chelsea. And I can understand why he'd want to prioritise that. And this Chelsea side should be competing for a Premier League title next year, and that's why they will be going in for him. I think Kai Havertz, it'd be nice and refreshing to see Chelsea go, actually, we're going to back Kai Havertz, we're going to back our current players that we invested 150 million in last summer. But I don't think majority of fans actually want that, and I don't think that that's actually what the club will do. Sergio asks, is the 3-1-4-2 formation used against Fulham the first sign of what Tuchel is planning for next season? It looks like a free centre-back version of the 4-2-2-2 he used at PSG. I said this on Saturday. I do think so, and I actually think the 4-2-2-2 could be the main formation next season. This is based on stuff I've heard from people like Dan McCarthy, like Simon Phillips, others as well that I know have good information around Chelsea, and I can understand it, especially if we are going in for another striker. I think we do need to be a lot more expansive next season, in particular games like against Fulham. I think my frustration has been with Tuchel so far that I think his overall caution in terms of defensive structure has really benefited us in big games. It's where Tuchel thrives. That more reactive, or at least cautious approach with the players we have, I think works out so well. It's why the defensive structure has been so good. I think if Chelsea, in particular in terms of the Premier League, want to win a Premier League title, Chelsea have to take more risks in the smaller games, in the games that aren't those big contests against, say, Man City, Liverpool, Man United. That's where Chelsea need to improve on next season, because it's not just about those top 6 games. We could have a same record in these big games and Tuchel continues to win them. But if we continue to drop points against the likes of Brighton, West Brom, those type of teams next season, Chelsea will not be able to catch Man City. That's the big issue. So I think something like that as well. I think that it'd be a massive shame if we've got all this attacking talent and they just get turned into a counter-attacking team that aren't as expansive. I would love to see a team. You can't do it every game because the opposition, and of course, pragmatism is there, and the flexibility of Tuchel has been so impressive, and having that defensive structure which you need. But buying players like Hakim Ziyech, buying players like Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Christian Pulisic, Mason Mount, others too, Callum Hudson-Odoi could get more minutes next season. We've invested in all these players, I think, to play more exciting football, to be honest, and I think that absolutely needs to be the case next season. So I think that was maybe the first sign that Tuchel will be a lot more braver next year in these games. And finally, Jeremiah asks, could you do a brief review of the performance of our women's team over the season? We're second in the WSL and can go top if we win our game in hand, and just thrashed Bayern 4-1 to secure our place in the Champions League final. I really hope Thomas Tuchel gets us to the final, because it would be beautiful if both our women's and men's team made it to the Champions League final. That bit there is something that is incredible. I wouldn't have predicted that back in, March or February time when both teams started playing their last 16 ties, because, Chelsea hadn't made it past the last 16 in 7 years. I actually more expected the women's team to make it to the final. The women's team, I've seen some other fellow Chelsea YouTubers talk about them, absolutely deserve praise. They have been absolutely astonishing. Emma Hayes has done such a wonderful job at Chelsea in terms of her development as a coach. If you didn't watch the game yesterday, just pick out Emma Hayes' post-match interview. The emotion and honesty of her is so refreshing. I think as a coach at her level, to be so transparent and just so relatable. This team is wonderful to watch, and they're full of great characters. They've been a joy to watch this season, they really have, and that's not always been the case for the men's team. The style of football they play is some of the most exciting in the women's game, and they could be very well vindicated at the end of the season by winning the Champions League against Barcelona in that final. They fully deserve it. I've loved watching them play. Me and Jay McIntosh cover the women's team very regularly on our podcast every other Sunday. The way Kerr and Kirby, two big players for Chelsea this season, the way they've linked together. The story of Fran Kirby has been astonishing. Just, in terms of sports stories, in terms of comebacks from a difficult place, Fran Kirby just is a great player, I think, too, and such an inspirational story too. Pernille Harder scoring a big goal. She was such a big signing for Chelsea last summer, but just all round that team. And Katrin Berger, just an amazing goalkeeper who's been astonishing. I mean, you think about Petr Cech's big saves in our 2012 Champions League winning run. Berger is doing similar this year for Chelsea in all of their games against Atletico Madrid in the knockout stage, against Wolfsburg, and now against Bayern Munich. It was an incredible game yesterday, and it really gets you set up now for Chelsea semi-final, and it would be wonderful for the club to be the men's and women's team to be in the Champions League final. But I think for the women's team, I hope more people, if you haven't checked them out, please go and watch the women's team, because they're flourishing at the moment. It's the golden age. Some of the players they have are incredible. Kerr and Kirby as those attackers, Pernille Harder as well. I just think the way that team has developed and continues to grow, the investment in the women's game, more coverage, I think more respect and more appreciation of the women's game. It's great to see. So absolutely happy to talk about the women's team, and great to see them being successful. And mostly I think it's just wonderful for Emma Hayes, who has just done such a wonderful job and is finally getting the credit she deserves. But that is it for this episode of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.